So evidence-based HR is about using various forms of evidence. It's about having a kind of structured and explicit process around that evidence gathering and assimilation. And it's being able to use that evidence to translate that into decision making. So what I do is I use the EBHR chart, which says that there are the 4 sources of evidence. What I have had to do in my job is build a program, a learning and development program, which would apply to half of the managers and leaders within the company. So before I set out on that and what is the best approach, and before I really delve into the strategy, what I would want to be doing is looking at what sources of evidence exist to help me make the best decision as to what that strategy should be, and therefore how I'm going to implement that program. So I naturally I build on my own experience. If it's a learning and development program, I'd speak to other key people who could provide the professional expertise, such as the learning and development team. So I start to understand what could be our potential solution, what evidence do they have to help arrive at that from the L&D point of view. And then I can look at other evidence from within the organization. So, for example, engagement surveys would be a good example. Any data that we've got, data on retention, any data on absence, on training, is all helpful to me as I'm building that program. So I start to understand the patterns and where do I need to address the training and development need, the learning and development need. Then what I do is think about senior leadership and what is their view and input, what evidence can they give to the process. So I start off with my own expertise and that of other key stakeholders who provide professional expertise. I move into the evidence within the organization. I take in the context of senior leadership. And then the other thing I enjoy doing or like doing, and I think it's an important part of the wheel, is looking at what evidence is there in what we call grey literature, which is organizations that produce stuff that has not gone into a commercial context, and also any scientific information. And for this particular program, I was looking at some of the evidence produced by Gallup, for example. There might be case studies as well. And I found a couple of case studies which were useful. And what I was particularly interested in was micro-learning. My idea was this program is going to be based on micro-learning. And so using some case studies of companies that had already done that was helpful for me to understand how we might build it. So the result of that is that we're at the stages of implementing that program now. And it's essentially a program based on micro-learning and leveraging a platform provided by the L&D team and building on the evidence that we've got. We're able to put in place the right structure, whether it be communications, and we also build the right structure to deliver the data and insights that we need in the future. So, for example, or the HR team will have training on how to pull data from the platform, and they will be able to evaluate it as we go. It's believed that hard data is the only way that you can gain a basis for better decision making. And what I explained was a wide range of evidence. So I'm trying to make the most optimal use of the evidence that's available. And it's not just, big data, or it's not just hard numbers. I think HR professionals just need to have experience of using evidence-based HR as a process. And I think that will then encourage greater take-up, because once you have that education and awareness, then I think it's a relatively short step then to exploring, because the things I talked about are very much within the reach of HR professionals in organisations. Where we work and how we work has been governed by a lack of evidence. I think it's been judged by some organisations in the context of the predilections and views of certain individuals in the organisation, rather than looking at the evidence. And I think the mandated return to office for some organisations, and I totally understand as well that organisations have their own business context and decisions to work in their own conditions. I just wonder, my question is more, did we completely look at the evidence that we gained from the pandemic and the lockdown? Did we look at all the sources before we made the decision that we had to tell people they had to come back to the office for mandated days of the week? And I'll give you an example, just a survey that was out there that was fairly recent, Pebble survey, said of 2,000 parents surveyed, 1,000 said that they would leave the workplace because the increased costs of childcare brought about by mandated return to office. Now, if organisations had taken into account that evidence, which is powerful, but also judged it along other evidence, I'm not sure so many would have said in a default way, we just need to get people back in the office as mandate days. I think the first thing is expand your reading and watch list, and so it's just about educational awareness and the for example, the evidence-based HR forum and the materials and information and resources and content that Rob Brenner and the team produce is second to none, really. It's brilliant. And so I'd certainly say, expand your reading and watch list as an HR professional. Then think about a program or an initiative that you could implement an evidence-based HR approach, going along the lines that I talked about with the process, etc., with the 4 sources of evidence. And then I would say, because it helps you in terms of future programs, I would produce a report or evidence myself from that trial program initiative and seek to promote and evangelize that within my organization. And those 3 things would really help the individual, that help that organization, and they'll help the general move towards a more evidence-based HR approach within HR.